Let's create a custom tool in ArcGIS Pro using Python that creates rectangular buffers around a point based on user input. Let's check it out. Up top, we are importing ArcPy, and we'll have several user inputs, but there will only be two that are required. That is the input point feature class, from which we are going to create the rectangle buffers from. We will also set an output feature class that will represent the polygon feature class as our output. Users will have two options. They can either use width and height dimensions from field attributes, or they can input the width and height of the buffer. Our use fields parameter will be a boolean. If set to true, we will use field values, and if set to false, we will use user input widths and heights. User will also have an option to transfer the attributes from the point feature class to the output polygon feature class, and they will also get to choose which fields they wish to transfer. We have a handful of required objects. We're going to get the spatial reference system from the input point features, and we'll use the same for the output polygon features. We want to know the OID field name from our input point features. Usually this is object ID, but it could also be OID, FID, or another user-defined field name. If the user has chosen to use field values for the width and the height, then we're going to create a dictionary where the key is the OID value, and the value to the dictionary will be the width and the height as a tuple. We'll create a list of fields to transfer to the output from the input. We'll want the OID field name, which will output to a field called ArcFID. We also want the fields chosen by the user, if any, and also the shape at XY, which are the X and Y coordinates to the point. This, of course, will not be transferred to the output. It's simply going to help us create the rectangle around the point. We're going to use an insert cursor to insert features into an output feature class. So we're going to create an outfield list. The OID field is going to match onto the ArcFID. Any input user fields will also be matched. We're going to update the geometry for the output to be the rectangle. We do not need these add messages here. They are in by mistake. I'm going to create a memory feature class. That is, that it will sit in the memory workspace rather than exporting to disk. Once we have the rectangles added and any attributes, we'll then export to disk at the end of the script. If the user has chosen a list of fields to transfer, then we'll use the create feature class to create a polygon feature class in memory, and we'll use the input point features as a template. We're then going to delete any fields that the user has chosen not to keep. If the user has not chosen any fields, then we simply do not use the input point features as a template. We now have a polygon feature class held in memory for us to use the insert cursor to create our output feature class. We're going to add an ArcFID field to our output feature class. This would allow you to join the polygon to the point in any workflow in the future, so should you wish. But now the main event, we're going to create the polygons. We open a search cursor, so with arcpy.da.search cursor, we're iterating over our input point features, and we're using the in field list. We're then going to open up an insert cursor, go to arcpy.da.insert cursor. We're going to insert into our temporary polygon feature class in our memory workspace. We want to update the outfield list. So for each row in our search cursor, we're going to get the X and Y coordinates for the point. Row -1 here is just accessing the shape at XY token. If the user manually input the buffer width and buffer height, we're going to divide each of those by 2. Otherwise, we're going to use our width height dictionary and access the attribute value for each point that represents the width and the height. We also divide these values by 2. Now we want to construct the array of points that represent the rectangle. We'll create a variable called rectangle. We're going to use the arcpy.array object. You see this takes a list. We're going to fill this list with arcpy point objects. We get the xmin, ymin, xmin, ymax, xmax, ymax, xmax, ymin, and then close the polygon again with the xmin, ymin. And you can see in here we're getting the x value, taking away the half the width, the y value, taking away half the height. That represents the x min and y min. Taking the x value and taking away half the width, y value and adding half the height. This is the x min and y max, and so on. Now convert this array to a polygon object. The inputs are the rectangle array above, and we set the spatial reference to match that of our input point feature class. We assign our ArcPy polygon geometry object to a variable called polygon. We'll now insert the feature to our output feature class that is still stored in memory. We'll create a variable called insert feature. We'll convert our search cursor row 0 to -1 to a list. Row is a tuple, and we're going to convert to a list. And we don't want the shape at XY token. We're going to replace that for the polygon object. Now we're going to insert the feature, the record, or the row using our insert cursor. So we call our insert cursor and the insert row function, and we supply in our insert feature, which is a list of attributes and the polygon geometry. This will be done for each point in our input point feature class, and there will be a matching polygon created. Now we want to save the disk, so we call the ArcPy, and from the conversion toolbox, the export features geoprocessing tool. Our in features is our temp polygon feature class in our memory workspace, and our out features is the output feature class as set by the user. Although not necessary, I do like to clean up the memory workspace at the end of each workflow, or when that data in the memory workspace is no longer useful. Here I call the ArcPy, and from the management toolbox, the delete tool. I set the in data to be the temporary polygon feature class. So let's head over to ArcGIS Pro and take a look at the custom tool in a toolbox before we see the tool in action. So I've created a toolbox script tool, and I've called it create rectangle around point. This creates rectangular buffer zones around points based on a user defined width and height. So let's check out the parameters and see what makes this tick. Our two required parameters are the input point features and the output feature class, and these both have a data type of feature layer. The direction for the input is obviously input, and for our output feature class is output. We scroll over and check out filter. For the input point feature class, we have set that you can only use a point feature class as input, and for the output feature class, we can only output to polygon. We have a Boolean option, which will be a checkbox, whether to use field attributes for width or height or not. And the default for that is false. The user can set the width and the height, also optional, and these are data type double. The entry for width and height is based on the unit of the projected coordinate system. So if your coordinate system is in feet, then this unit is feet, and if it is in meters, then it is meters. If the use field attributes for width and height is checked, then these height and width inputs will disappear, and the user will be able to choose a width field and a height field from the input point feature class. For the width and height field, we've added a dependency on the input point feature class, and you can only choose numerical fields from the input. The user can optionally transfer attributes to the output polygon feature class. This is a Boolean. If checked, then the fields to transfer parameter will show. If left unchecked, none of the fields will be transferred, and only the orange FID field will be created in the output. If it is checked and users are choosing fields, the dependency is on the input point feature class, and here are the type of fields that you can transfer. We go to the execution tab. Over the right hand side, you click this folder icon and you navigate to where the Python script resides, and you reference it to the tool. You can see the Python script here that we walked through moments ago. We have some validation to do. When the tool first opens, parameter 5, 6 and 8 are going to be disabled. So we set enabled to false. And if we check parameters 5, 6 and 8 in the parameters, 5 is the width field, 6 is the height field, and 8 is the fields to transfer. The width field and height field only show when the use field attribute for width and height is set to true, and the fields to transfer only shows when transfer attributes is set to true. I'll go back to validation. First I'm going to go down to the update messages. So if a user sets an input point feature class, we're going to get the spatial reference object for that feature class. And only if the spatial reference is projected will you be able to run this tool. If the spatial reference type is anything other than projected, an error message is going to display that the input must use a projected coordinate system. Scroll up. We'll take a look what happens when we update parameters. If params2 dot value is set to true, and params2 is our use field attributes for width and height, we're going to enable params 5 and 6, which is the width and height field, and we'll disable params 3 and 4, which is where the user enters the width and height values. We'll also clear any width and height values that may have been set. Otherwise, if params2 is not true, then we disable the width and height fields and we enable the manual entry for width and height, and we clear any field values that might have been set for the width and height. If param 7 is set to true, so this is to transfer the attributes, then we enable params 8 where we can choose the fields to transfer. Otherwise, the fields to transfer input is disabled, and we make sure that the fields to transfer has been cleared. So I'll click OK and we can see this tool in action. I currently have 2 point layers in my map. One up top here is in a geographic coordinate system, and the one below here is in a projected coordinate system. I'm going to open the tool. I'm going to input points that have the geographic coordinate system. We can see here I'm getting this error message. Input must use a projected coordinate system. So I'll change it to the points FC that is in a projected coordinate system, and we can see that that error disappears. First up, I'm just going to use the default settings. I'll call this points underscore FC default. I'm going to leave the use field attributes for width and height unchecked. I'm going to set a width of 10 and a height of 20. And I'm not going to transfer attributes. And I'll click run. Oops, and I've actually got an error there. That cannot find field, that's an empty string. I'll go back to my script and rectify that. If I scroll up, what's happening here, if there are no fields selected, that this portion is an empty string. I'm going to scroll down here to if there are no fields selected, that I will remove the empty string from each of those lists. So we have our input field list, and I'll just remove any empty string, and I'll do the same for the outfield list to remove the empty string. I'll save that and head back over to ArcGIS Pro, and I'll simply rerun. You can see our points FC default has been added to our map. If I right click and go to attribute table, you can see we have an orange FID field. We have the shape length and shape area. If we scroll in and use measure, you can see the width is 10 meters and the height is 20. I'm going to open up the original points FC feature class. You can see here I have a short field and a double field, a float field, along with a long field. I'm going to use one of these for the width and one of them for the height when creating these rectangles. I'll use the short field and the double field. Go back over to the tool. I'll just rename this at for attributes, that we're using attributes to drive the width and height. I'll click on use field attributes for width and height, and we should see the width and height here disappear. and a choice of fields. From the drop down, I have all the numerical fields from the input feature class. I'm going to click short field for the width. For the height, I'll click double field and I'll click run. See, now we have a new layer added to our map. I'll point FC at, turn that on and off. Open the attribute table. You can see the original FID and the shape length and shape area. Go to the attribute table. Let's run again. This time we are going to transfer attributes. I'll call this point FC fields. And we're going to transfer attributes. I'm going to transfer the text field and the long field. I'll click run. I'll go to the attribute table. And we can see that those fields have been transferred to the output. Now I'll turn off some of these layers here. I'll turn off all the layers we've created except for the original points. And I'm just going to do a selection. I'll grab some of them there. You can see over here that use the selected records. There are 10. I'll call this points FC selection. I'm not going to use the width and heights from the fields. I'm going to enter 25 and 52. And we'll keep the transfer attributes and I'll click run. And we can see that they have only been made for the points that were selected. If you find that useful or you know a better way to do that, please leave a comment and make sure to check out more ArcPy videos up here and be sure to subscribe. Take care.